been putting off making this video for a long time, but I feel like now is probably a good time. So, you read the description. What I'm going to talk about is depression. But I think what I'm going to do first is tell you guys my journey and my story. Maybe it'll help somebody else, or maybe I'm just talking out of my butt. Who knows? I don't know. So I've dealt with depression for a long time. It got really bad probably when I was 17. Started having a lot of anxiety, like very, very bad anxiety, panic attacks, to the point where I couldn't leave the house without completely freaking out. And that is a terrible, terrible mental state to be in. It's very terrifying and it's very scary, because you don't really, at the time, I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was dying. I thought there was something wrong with me. I was gonna die. And it took me a really long time to get a hold on it. It took me a long time to realize I wasn't the only person in the world that was happening to. So I think I'm gonna start there and just say, when I was 17, started having crippling anxiety, and I quit high school. I didn't graduate high school. 4 months before I should have graduated, I dropped out because my anxiety was so bad. I lost complete control of myself. Like, my world completely crumbled, and I didn't know what to do about it, and I didn't know how to handle it. So, at that point, I was very confused, very, very, very lost. And the relationship that I was in was pretty bad. He was my first real boyfriend, I guess you could say, and he wasn't very nice. He made me believe that nobody else is gonna want me. If I wasn't with him, I couldn't do anything without him. So there were a lot of years, probably that relationship was 5 years. So I spent those 5 years being broken down basically to a shell of my former self. And people talk about abusive relationships like, well, I would have left. I wouldn't have put up with that. Well, when you're in it, it's a little bit different. You're so confused, and your mind is sort of warped, and you really start to believe those things, which is a shame, but that's what happens. So eventually I got out of that relationship. I moved back home with my dad, which was the best thing that I could have done. He was very supportive. He helped build me back up, and that was great, but I was still very lost and depressed. But I'm sorry. I slowly started to realize that I wasn't stuck in that. I didn't have to be stuck in that I was still worthy of somebody loving me, which when you're depressed and you've been around somebody for so long that makes you feel like nothing, it's very hard to come out of that. And it's very hard for you to believe that you're worthy. But I did eventually, and I came out of that. And I was myself again for a while. And then I met my kid's dad. And at that point, I was working at a gas station for a lady that eventually became like my mother. She took me in when I was very, very lost. And she kind of became that guiding force in my life that I really needed. She was like my mother. So I was there for a long time, almost 5 years. And I met my kid's dad. So that's a whole other story. I will get to that. But she is what I needed at that point in my life, I think. And that was a good thing. That was a good influence. So I loved her very, very much. So when I met my kid's dad, things were good until I got pregnant with my oldest son, and that's kind of when things started to fall apart. And he was not very nice. He put me down a lot, made me feel like crap, like I just wasn't gonna be anything without him. I tried to make it work, and we did have good times. It wasn't all bad, and it wasn't extremely abusive, nothing like that. But I mean, I think it was verbally and emotionally abusive, which shouldn't be any less abusive than physical abuse. So that relationship lasted for 9 years, and eventually I convinced myself I had to go because I just couldn't do it anymore. I really tried. I tried going to counseling, he wouldn't go. And I knew that the day I left, he was going to make my life a living hell. That's part of why I stayed so long. And that was true. When I finally left him, he made the next year and a half of my life a living hell. It was a battle between he and I for our kids. And I watched my kids cry for me. I was very, very alone at that point. He actually got me fired from my job. So that was the week before Thanksgiving of 2017. So week before Thanksgiving, I was fired. He had called and made several complaints to my job, and it was affecting my work performance. I was crying every day at work. It just was not good. So, and I don't blame them for letting me go because, I mean, I was kind of a mess, but that was a week before Thanksgiving, and I just bought a new car. So there I was with nothing. I had no job. I just bought a new car. I didn't know how I was going to provide Christmas for my children. And that was a very, very hard situation to get through. But through prayer and faith and family and friends, I made it through that point. And things got better for a while. I was doing good. I started out in like a 1-bedroom garage apartment when I first left him, and I had nothing. I left with what was mine, what I came into the relationship with, and I moved into a really crappy apartment, but that was all I had at the time, so I made it through that, and I eventually moved into a rent house, 2-bedroom rent house. My kids had their own room and things were going a lot better. Before that, let me back up. 3 years ago, the lady that I mentioned that really took me in, that I worked for, she passed away. That was very hard for me because she lived in Georgia. I'm in Oklahoma. I moved out here when my oldest son turned 1 and he's now 10. So it just so happened that I was back home for a week, and the day that I was driving home, I didn't know this, but she had a stroke, and they had found her in the floor in her house, and they had taken her to the hospital, and she was in ICU. That just happened to be the day that I was driving home. And the next day I get a call from an old friend and said, "Hey, are you in Oklahoma?" I said, "No, actually I'm here." I think that was divine intervention that I was actually there that week that happened. So I went to see her in ICU. She didn't know I was there. She was hooked up to all this stuff, and it was really hard to see her that way. But I sat on the bed with her and I held her hand and I told her how much I loved her. And it was really hard for me to leave because I stood at the doorway and looked at her for several minutes because I knew that was the last time I was ever going to see her. I knew that. So that was very hard. So I lost her. And now skipping forward. I was in another relationship and I thought things were great. Turned out he'd been seeing somebody almost the whole time, so that one ended. I was down again. Then I met someone else. This person, I believe, was in a lot of ways my soulmate. He was amazing. His name was Scott, and he had a beautiful soul. Beautiful. We connected on every level, and he saw everything about me and loved me anyway. Loved me so much. And I loved him. And the first night that we spent time together, we just hung out and we listened to music and we talked for like 6 hours, and it was amazing. He told me, he said, "I just want you to know I'm a recovering addict." And I said, "Okay. I'm not going to judge you for that. Everybody has a story. Everybody comes from something. Everybody has something in their past they're trying to overcome. I get it." I didn't judge him for that at all. So we had a great relationship. We made each other laugh. We got along great. So much love for each other. And some things happened. I guess I really probably don't have time to get into all the details of it, but he did end up relapsing with heroin. That was very hard for me to love somebody so much and watch them go down that road again, and then you can't do anything. So, sorry, I'm trying to move you guys because my foot's asleep. Sorry. So anyway, so he was gonna go down to Texas to a sober living house and get straight. I completely supported him in that. That's great. You do that. Focus on you, get better, come back to me. Because that's where you belong, with me. So that was a very hard struggle. I tried my best to encourage him every day. and make sure he knew how much he was loved every single day. And he was very much loved. But I also understood when the mindset that he was in and the place he was in his life was hard for him to accept it, that somebody loved him that much. So, January 26th of 2019 was the last time that I spoke to him. And I had sent him a YouTube video of an artist that I introduced him to that he loved. I love too very much. Him covering a song of another artist that we both very much loved. And the last thing we said to each other was, he said, that was really good, I like that. Those two dudes are heavyweights and I like them doing each other's songs. And the last thing I said to him was, totes my goats. Which is completely stupid and random, but that was January 26, 2019, about 6:30 p.m. And the next day, they found him in a hotel room. He had died of an overdose. That was extremely hard for me. I lost my soulmate and my best friend. It was very hard. And there was no funeral for him. He was cremated. I understand it was very hard for his parents. So they waited for a while before they could have, some kind of memorial because it's very hard, which I understand. They didn't have a memorial until May 11th, which is a long time, but I get it. So, I lost Scott. Honestly, don't know how I lived through that, but I did. So, in April, I got a phone call from my stepmom. My dad had been battling cancer for a year. Basically, what she told me was, your dad's in the hospital again. I think you need to come home. So I did. I dropped everything. Called my boss and said, I have to go. I don't have any vacation time, but I have to go now. So I did. Dropped everything and drove straight to the hospital in Georgia. The day I got there was April 29th, which was my dad's 60th birthday. So, he was in ICU. They weren't letting him have any food or anything. And he was just losing a lot of blood internally. And I think I tried to tell myself that it wasn't as bad as it was at that point, but it was pretty bad. He was very pale, but he still had his sense of humor, which I loved. Very much like mine. He still kept a sense of humor. So I was there for a week. I got there on Monday and I left on Saturday. And I got home on Sunday. Monday morning, probably around 6:30 in the morning, I get a call from my brother. And as soon as I looked at my phone, I knew that he was gone. So I didn't answer it because I wasn't ready to hear it, I think. So then my stepmom called me because I didn't answer. I didn't answer her call either. I wasn't ready. So I just kind of laid there in the dark for a few minutes. And then my stepmom texted me 911. So I laid there for a few more minutes, just thinking about it. Had to get myself prepared to hear the words. So I called her back. She was crying. My dad was gone. He had passed away that morning. So I had to call my boss again. And I had to tell her, I have to go back. My dad passed away this morning. I have to go back. I just gotten back the day before. And here I was leaving again to go back to bury my father. It was the hardest week of my entire life. But by divine intervention again, I believe I had my best friend with me the whole week. Without him, there is absolutely no way I would have made it through that. But I did. I came home. As things slowly got back to normal, I was okay again for a little while. Then I started dating someone that I had met way back in March, early March. But we didn't date back then. We just kind of talked for a little bit, and then we didn't talk until I got back in touch with him like May 17th, a couple of days before my birthday. So that's when we started talking again, and then we started dating probably June sometime. So we broke up Sunday. Maybe it was Saturday. Doesn't matter. Totally stupid situation. What happened was I still had my old Tinder profile out there. That is how I met Scott, through Tinder. And while I was coping with his death, I would go back and read our messages from when we first met, the first day we talked, and it helped me cope for some reason. So I left that profile out there. And then eventually I stopped going back and reading it. Torturing myself, I guess. And I was focused on moving on with the person that I was dating at the time. Didn't really think about that profile anymore because I was with somebody and it was out of sight, out of mind. Didn't even worry about it. I just didn't think about it. So, a couple of weeks ago, he had come over. I was supposed to come over the next day too, but I didn't hear anything from him. And he didn't talk to me for a week. So I finally figured out he was on Tinder. And when I asked him about it, he threw my Tinder profile in my face. I guess he thought that I was out there looking for someone else, cheating on him or something, but I wasn't. All I did was wait for this man all the time, for him to call me, text me, have time for me. Which was stupid. I shouldn't have done that. So I didn't really get a chance to explain why that profile was still out there. And how do you tell somebody that anyways? Yeah, I kept it for a long time for my dead ex-boyfriend's messages when I was coping with his death. How do you bring that up anyways? Stupid. So he threw that in my face. Kind of made it my fault that we broke up. Didn't want to hear anything I had to say, no explanation or anything. He just told me it was best I left him alone. And he blocked my number, blocked me from all social media, so I had no chance to explain myself, which I really don't think he would have believed it anyways. He's a very fuck you type person. He's gonna believe what he wants. He's not gonna want to hear anything I have to say anyway, so that's that. And I think this breakup was just kind of like the icing on the cake that spiraled me into a deep depression again. Not that I could say that I was in love with him or that I loved him, because it was a very short relationship and we never really saw each other anyways. But I think there was somewhat of a head game going on with him. I think just kind of messed me up a little bit. Threw me off track, and I lost sight of my worth and my value, which shouldn't ever happen, but it does. I think with someone with depression, you have certain triggers. Like, you can be completely fine for a long time, and I was, and I mean, I take antidepressants every day, and I was completely fine for a long time. I was good with being alone. I was good with being single. I was moving on from losing Scott. I just couldn't sit with that grief anymore. So, I think with this relationship, I think was a trigger. I don't think it was necessarily because we broke up, I'm so upset. I think it was a trigger back into feeling like, why does everybody leave? Why am I not worthy enough for someone to stay? And that's a hard thing to get over. With depression, like, logically, you know that it's your own self lying to you. Like, you are worthy. Why would you not be? You're a great person. You're hilarious. You're not the ugliest thing in the world. You got that going for you. You're a genuinely happy person, but you have a very heavy soul. That's where I stand. I'm a happy person. I'm funny. I'm fun to be around. I like to laugh and joke all the time. But my soul is very heavy. I'm not saying that I've had a horrible life, because in retrospect, I haven't had a horrible life. And I know a lot of people have it so much worse than I do. So much. But with depression, it's like, depression doesn't discriminate. It doesn't pick and choose, I guess you could say. And it's like, it just is. It's something that just is. It's hard to get a handle on sometimes. Especially being out here in Oklahoma. All my family is in Georgia. So, I'm trying to figure out why this pain hurts. Why this breakup hurts. I went through losing my soulmate in a very tragic way. 4 months later, I lost my dad, my best friend. I made it through that, and I came out the other side. I saw the light on the other side, and I came out, and I was okay. Why is this one hurting? When he wasn't even a good boyfriend. Like, he didn't even make me feel wanted or loved. Like, I don't think even one time he texted me and said, I miss you. That's stupid. And I think I finally figured out why it hurts. Because he had his own issues that I obviously couldn't help him with. I think he doesn't understand how to communicate. Which for some people is very hard. That's cool. It's hard for some people. Seems like I date all of them though. But I think I figured out that it goes back to that feeling everyone leaves. Why am I not good enough for one person to stay? And just love me through everything that I am. I'm not always fun to be around. Not always. Who is? But why am I not worthy for that one person to stay? To figure me out, to love me at 3 in the afternoon when I love life, but also love me at 2 in the morning when I'm falling apart. And I think that's a hard thing to overcome. But I'm doing it because I don't have a choice. I'm down. Pretty down, but I just have to keep hope that things will get better. And I know that they will eventually. I know. It's just hard to see that right now. When you feel very worthless, unloved, unworthy of love. Feel very cast aside and very alone, I guess is the best way to describe it. But it's more than just being alone. It's like, it's a very cold, dark emptiness. And I know that logically, I'm the only one that can feel that emptiness. I can't look to someone else to fill that for me. I know that. I've been there. That doesn't work. And I've been on top where I do that for myself. But it's going to take me a little bit of time. So, I don't know if anybody will get anything from this video. I'm sorry that I cried a little bit, got emotional, but I'm kind of in an emotional state right now. Things are hard today. So, I know I'm not alone. And I have to keep telling myself that because I know I'm not, but something inside me is just lying to me over and over and over. And that's hard. The hardest battle is with yourself. And I'm really scared one day I'm not going to make it through that. If I'm being completely honest, I'm afraid one day that I'm not going to be able to be so tough anymore. I mean, today is Wednesday. the most I've eaten since Sunday is 2 packs of crackers and a bowl of soup. That's all I've eaten since Sunday. And I don't want it. I don't want food. I don't know. That's hard. So my conclusion is, I guess, after 35 minutes of talking, if you feel this way, reach out to somebody. To me, that's what's been keeping me going, just talking to anybody that'll listen. Reach out to me, because I know what it's like. So anyway, I put that video for a long time because it's kind of hard to talk about, and I think I needed to do it because it's hard to talk about, and I think maybe it's kind of part of my healing process, and maybe it's the start of someone else's. I hope. So if you made it to the end of this video, thank you. And it was very hard to make this video. It was very, very vulnerable and open. So depression sucks. I don't want to wish it on anybody. But you're not alone. Please, please, please reach out to someone. Even though I know it's very hard and you don't feel like anybody's going to want to listen. But I will listen, because I completely understand what you're going through. It sucks. It hurts. It's empty. It's dark. We'll get through it together. That's the only thing I can tell you. We'll get through it together. So, thanks for watching. Bye.